My name is Lisa Reynolds, and I was 29 when my best friend of 20 years secretly cut me from her wedding guest list. We had been inseparable since third grade, but apparently not important enough for her big day. The rejection stung deeper than I could have imagined. Instead of wallowing, I booked a spontaneous vacation to a remote beach resort. Little did I know that while I was finding peace in paradise, her elaborate wedding was imploding spectacularly. My phone, purposely set on airplane mode, missed the frantic calls from my entire family as the drama unfolded. If you are watching this from somewhere you once escaped to when life got tough, drop a comment below. Before I tell you how my so-called best friend betrayed me, hit that like button and subscribe. Olivia Wallace and I met in third grade at Pinewood Elementary. She was the new girl with perfectly braided hair and expensive shoes that the other kids immediately targeted. During lunch on her first day, Bethany Miller knocked Olivia's tray out of her hands, sending spaghetti all over her white blouse. While everyone laughed, I walked over, helped her up, and gave her my jacket to cover the stain. That simple act of kindness formed the foundation of what would become 20 years of friendship. We became inseparable almost immediately. Our favorite spot was a small clearing in the woods behind my house where we built a makeshift fort using fallen branches and old blankets. We spent countless afternoons there sharing secrets and making plans for our futures. On her 10th birthday, Olivia gave me a handmade friendship bracelet with our initials woven into the pattern. I wore mine until it literally fell apart 5 years later. The teenage years only strengthened our bond. When Tommy Sanders asked me to the 8th grade dance and then stood me up, Olivia spent the night at my house with ice cream and movies, assuring me that any boy who would do that was not worth my tears. 2 years later, I returned the favor when her parents announced their divorce. She showed up at my door at midnight, eyes swollen from crying, and stayed for a week while her parents sorted out the initial arrangements. Even then, there were subtle signs of Olivia's insecurities. She constantly compared herself to the popular girls, wondering why her hair was not as shiny or her clothes not as trendy. I always reminded her that she was beautiful just as she was, but the reassurance never seemed to fully sink in. She would scrutinize herself in mirrors, pinching at imaginary fat on her slender frame, or lamenting her perfectly normal features. My parents always described me as grounded. I never cared much about impressing others or climbing social ladders. I enjoyed simple pleasures like reading on my porch swing or hiking local trails. Olivia, however, kept a carefully curated collection of fashion magazines and celebrity gossip. She would spend hours analyzing what made certain people worthy of attention and admiration. We went to different colleges but managed to stay close. I pursued elementary education at State University, while Olivia attended the prestigious Collins Institute for Fashion Design in New York. During holiday breaks, we would catch up as if no time had passed. Though I noticed her vocabulary shifting to include industry jargon and references to designers I had never heard of. It was during her junior year internship at Bellamy Fashion House that Olivia met Jason Peters at a charity gala. The Peters family owned a chain of luxury hotels and moved in extremely influential circles. When she called to tell me about meeting him, her voice contained an excitement I had never heard before. Lisa, he knew everyone at the event, the mayor, celebrities, fashion icons, and he chose to talk to me all night, she gushed through the phone. His mother sits on boards of major art museums. His father golfs with senators. From that moment, subtle changes in Olivia became more pronounced. Her wardrobe, already fashion-forward, transformed to exclusively designer labels. Her speech patterns shifted, adopting the slightly bored tone of the ultra-wealthy. Even her laugh changed from the unrestrained giggle I had known to a controlled, elegant sound that never seemed to reach her eyes. When she visited home, she would name-drop, constantly mentioning weekend trips to the Hamptons or charity events with minor European royalty in attendance. I listened supportively, but inside I worried about the person my friend was becoming. New friends started appearing in her social media posts, women with impossibly thin bodies and expensive highlights, men in tailored suits with perfect teeth and family yachts. I found myself liking her photos, but feeling increasingly disconnected from her actual life. Despite the growing distance, I held on to our friendship. We still texted regularly, and whenever she came home, we made time for at least one dinner together. I convinced myself that underneath the designer clothes and new mannerisms, my childhood friend remained. The last genuine conversation we had was 3 months before Jason proposed. Olivia came home for her father's 60th birthday and stayed with me rather than at her mother's new condo. Late that night, after several glasses of wine, she confessed her fears. "Sometimes I feel like I am constantly auditioning," she whispered, curled up on my couch in an old college sweatshirt that made her look more like the Olivia I knew. Jason's world is exhausting. Everyone is always evaluating you, judging if you belong. "Then why stay in it?" I asked gently. The Olivia I know never cared what people thought. She smiled sadly. That Olivia did not know what she was missing. Now I have glimpsed a world of possibilities and connections. I cannot go back to ordinary. "Is ordinary so bad if it is authentic?" I challenged. She squeezed my hand. "You are the only person who still sees the real me. Promise me, we will always be friends, no matter what." "Of course," I assured her, 20 years and counting. "When Jason and I get married someday, you will be right there with me," she said with certainty. "I will never become one of those people who forgets where they came from." 1 month later, Jason proposed with a 7-carat diamond ring during a private yacht dinner in the Mediterranean. The Instagram post announcing their engagement received over 10,000 likes. My comment congratulating them was buried under hundreds of others, from fashion designers, minor celebrities, and socialites. Something told me things were about to change dramatically, but I ignored the warning bells. After all, she had promised nothing would change between us. The engagement party was held at the Peters family estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. The property sprawled over 15 acres, with manicured gardens and a view of Long Island Sound. I felt out of place the moment I arrived in my nicest dress from Nordstrom Rack, surrounded by women in couture and men in custom suits. Olivia greeted me with air kisses and introduced me as my oldest friend, with a tone that somehow made it sound like she was referring to an elderly relative rather than her closest confidant. "Lisa is a school teacher," she explained to a group of women whose collective jewelry could have paid off my student loans. "She has such patience with children. It is really quite admirable." The women nodded politely before smoothly changing the subject to someone's recent purchase of a summer home in Santorini. I sipped my champagne and tried not to feel invisible. Later that evening, I met Eleanor Peters, Jason's mother. She was a slender woman in her early 60s with perfectly coiffed silver hair and posture that suggested years of finishing school. "So you teach at a public school?" she asked, her expression suggesting I had said I worked with radioactive waste. "Yes, 3rd grade. I love that age when children are developing their own personalities but still have that sense of wonder," I replied. "How charitable of you," she said. "Though I imagine the salary must be challenging. Those shoes, for instance, must be quite comfortable." I glanced down at my sensible heels, suddenly aware of their scuffed edges. "They get me through a day of chasing 8-year-olds, I said with a forced smile. Eleanor gave a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. "Olivia mentioned you have been friends since childhood. How quaint to maintain such connections." Before I could respond, she spotted someone across the room and excused herself, leaving me feeling thoroughly assessed and found wanting. Later that night, Olivia pulled me into an empty bedroom away from the party. For a moment, I saw a flash of my old friend as she bounced excitedly on her toes. "I want you to be my maid of honor," she said, grabbing both my hands. "We have talked about this since we were girls. It has to be you." Relief flooded through me. Despite the awkwardness of the evening, our friendship still held meaning. "Of course," I said, hugging her tightly. "I would be honored." "Perfect. The wedding will be next June, just under a year to plan the social event of the season," she said with a giggle that finally sounded like the Olivia I knew. That moment of connection proved fleeting. Over the next few months, Olivia canceled our planning sessions with increasing frequency. "Eleanor has connected me with the most amazing wedding planner. She has done events for actual royalty," she texted, canceling our 3rd brunch date. "She has this vision that is absolutely perfect." The bridal party grew to include 6 of Olivia's new friends from her fashion circles and Jason's social world. I had met them only briefly at the engagement party and struggled to keep their names straight during the group texts about bridesmaid dresses. The dresses themselves were another source of stress. The designer label carried a $3,000 price tag that made my stomach churn. I dipped into my savings meant for a car down payment, telling myself this once-in-a-lifetime event for my best friend justified the expense. 2 months before the wedding, Olivia suggested lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown. She seemed unusually nervous, checking her phone frequently and barely touching her $60 salad. So, there have been some adjustments to the wedding party, she said finally, not quite meeting my eyes. Eleanor feels strongly that the aesthetic needs to be more uniform. What does that mean? I asked, though a sinking feeling told me exactly what was coming. Just some minor tweaks to create visual harmony, she said vaguely. The Peters family has certain expectations for events of this caliber. She changed the subject before I could press further, asking about my parents and commenting on the restaurant decor. We parted with a quick hug and promises to finalize details soon. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Danielle Whitman, a mutual friend from high school who had been added to the bridal party after her father invested in one of Jason's hotel developments. "Have you talked to Olivia?" she asked, her voice cautious. "A few days ago. Why?" I replied. "I just got an updated email about the bridal luncheon. Your name was not on it," she said. "I thought there must be a mistake." That evening, I texted Olivia directly. "Danielle mentioned some changes to the bridal party. Is everything okay?" Her response came hours later. "I was going to call you. Eleanor convinced me that 8 bridesmaids creates better symmetry than 9 for the ceremony. Since you and I have such a strong friendship, I knew you would understand why the others needed to stay for aesthetic purposes. You are still coming to the wedding, of course." The impersonal message hurt more than I expected. 20 years of friendship, and I was being cut for aesthetic purposes. I spent that night crying into my pillow, feeling like a teenager again. Except this time, Olivia was not there to comfort me. The final blow came 3 weeks before the wedding. While scrolling through Instagram, I noticed several mutual acquaintances posting about receiving gorgeous invitations to Olivia and Jason's wedding. Puzzled that mine had not arrived, I checked my mail again. Nothing. I called Olivia directly, something I rarely did anymore given her preference for texts. She did not pick up. After 3 attempts, I received a text. "In final venue walkthrough. Can I call tomorrow?" Increasingly anxious, I texted back. "Just checking on my invitation. Has it been sent?" The typing dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response finally came through. "This is awkward, but we had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list. The venue has strict capacity limits, and Jason's family had more essential invitees than anticipated." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Not only had I been removed from the bridal party, but I had been cut from the guest list entirely. "I see posts about new people being added to the guest list," I typed back, hands shaking. "Those are business connections of Jason's father. Very important for the family," she replied. The final text felt like a physical slap. "You would not really fit in with the crowd anyway, Lisa. The social dynamics would be uncomfortable for you. I am trying to spare you that awkwardness." I stared at those words until my vision blurred with tears. My oldest friend had decided I was not good enough for her new world. All those years, all those memories reduced to, "You would not really fit in." Shish. That night, I called my sister Alicia, barely coherent through my tears as I explained what had happened. "She did what?" Alicia exclaimed, outrage evident in her voice. "After you spent $3,000 on a bridesmaid dress you will never wear? That is beyond unacceptable." 20 years of friendship, I repeated, still unable to process the betrayal. "We were like sisters." "We should crash the wedding," Alicia suggested, only half joking. "I will wear white and bring a date with a questionable past." Despite my heartbreak, the image made me laugh through my tears. I just cannot believe she thinks I am not good enough for her fancy new life. The following Sunday, at our regular family dinner, my parents were equally appalled. My father, usually the calm one, actually swore when I showed them Olivia's final text. "That is not a friend," my mother declared, refilling my wine glass. "That is someone who has forgotten who she is and where she came from." As supportive as my family was, returning to my empty apartment that night brought the pain rushing back. I made the mistake of checking social media before bed and found my feed flooded with photos from Olivia's bachelorette weekend in Paris. The bridal party, all identical in height and build, with their expensive highlights and designer swimwear, posed in front of the Eiffel Tower with champagne flutes raised. That night I barely slept. The same thoughts circled endlessly. Was I not pretty enough? Not successful enough? Had our entire friendship been conditional on me knowing my place? The following weeks were a blur of functioning on autopilot. I showed up to teach my 3rd grade class with a smile and fell apart the moment I got home. My eating habits deteriorated as I cycled between not being hungry at all and consuming entire pints of ice cream while watching sad movies. Dark circles formed under my eyes from restless nights spent overthinking decades of interactions with Olivia. 2 weeks before the wedding, my school principal, Sarah, called me into her office. I braced myself for criticism about my recent performance. Lisa, is everything all right? She asked gently. You have not seemed yourself lately. To my horror, I burst into tears. Between sobs, I explained the situation with Olivia. Sarah listened patiently, offering tissues, as I unloaded weeks of built-up hurt. You have not taken a vacation day all year, she observed when I had finally composed myself. Maybe this is the universe telling you to take some time for yourself. And do what? Sit at home scrolling through wedding updates? I asked miserably. No, she said firmly. Go somewhere, anywhere. Preferably somewhere with no internet access where you can reconnect with yourself. That night, I found myself looking at travel websites. My finger hovered over destinations I had always wanted to visit. Paris was immediately rejected, too associated with Olivia's bachelorette party. Rome seemed too romantic for a solo traveler nursing a broken heart. Then an advertisement caught my eye. Eco retreat in Costa Rica. Disconnect to reconnect. The photos showed pristine beaches, lush rainforests, and simple but elegant cabins overlooking the ocean. The description emphasized limited internet connectivity, daily yoga and meditation, and opportunities for adventure or relaxation. At 2 a.m, in an act of either bravery or temporary insanity, I booked it. 7 days at Playa Serena Eco Resort, departing the day before Olivia's wedding. The cost depleted most of my savings, but as I clicked confirm, I felt the first stirring of excitement in weeks. The next morning, I requested my vacation days, which Sarah approved immediately with a supportive smile. This is exactly what you need, she assured me. I spent the next week preparing for my trip instead of obsessing over the wedding. I bought new swimsuits, hiking sandals, and biodegradable sunscreen. I researched Costa Rican wildlife and practiced basic Spanish phrases. Each purchase, each preparation felt like an act of reclaiming my story. When I told my family about my impulsive trip, reactions were mixed. Alicia high-fived me and demanded daily photos of hot Costa Rican tour guides. My father immediately checked the resort safety ratings and seemed satisfied with what he found. My mother, however, was concerned. The wedding is that weekend, she reminded me unnecessarily. What if you change your mind and want to reach out to Olivia? That is the point, Mom, I explained. I need to be somewhere I cannot obsessively check for wedding updates or be tempted to send a text I will regret. But we will not be able to reach you easily, she pressed, maternal worry evident in her frown. I will check in, I promised. The resort has Wi-Fi in the main lodge. I just will not have it in my cabin, which is perfect. The morning of my departure arrived with a strange mix of emotions. Sadness still lingered around the edges of my consciousness, but it was joined by a flutter of anticipation. As I zipped my suitcase closed, I glanced at the framed photo on my dresser of Olivia and me at our high school graduation, arms around each other with matching grins. After a moment of hesitation, I placed the frame face down. At the airport, I texted my family my flight information and basic details about the resort. Just before boarding, I sent one final message to our family group chat. Going on airplane mode now. We'll check in when I arrive. Love you all. As the plane took off, I switched my phone to airplane mode and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the next week, there would be no wedding updates, no social media comparisons, no reminders of my apparently inadequate existence. Just me, the ocean, and the chance to remember who I was beyond Olivia's oldest friend. The drive from the airport to Playa Serena took nearly 2 hours along winding coastal roads. My driver, Manuel, pointed out wildlife and landmarks along the way, his enthusiasm for his country evident in every description. By the time we turned onto the unpaved road leading to the resort, the sun was beginning to set, casting the rainforest in golden light. The resort itself exceeded the website photos, a collection of 20 wooden cabins nestled between dense jungle and pristine beach, connected by stone pathways lit with solar-powered lanterns. The main lodge was an open-air structure with exposed beams and comfortable seating areas scattered throughout. "Welcome to Playa Serena," greeted Lucia, the resort manager, as she handed me a fresh coconut with a straw. "Your journey was good?" "Yes, it was perfect," I replied, sipping the sweet coconut water. "Thank you." "You look tired," she observed kindly. "Not just from travel, from here," she added, touching her heart. Something about her gentle perception broke through my carefully maintained composure. My eyes filled with tears that I quickly tried to blink away. "It is okay," she said. "Many come here carrying burdens. The ocean has a way of washing them clean." After completing check-in, Lucia personally walked me to my cabin, the furthest one from the main lodge, perched on a small hill overlooking the water. Our most private accommodation, she explained, perfect for reflection. The cabin was simple but beautiful. A comfortable bed draped with mosquito netting faced floor-to-ceiling windows that opened to a private deck with a hammock. The bathroom featured an indoor-outdoor shower with plants growing around natural stone. "Dinner is served until 9, Lucia informed me, or I can have something brought to you if you prefer to rest." "I think I will stay here tonight," I said, already imagining myself in that hammock with the sound of waves below. "Very good. Breakfast begins at 6. The yoga class at 7 is excellent for releasing what no longer serves you." After she left, I unpacked quickly, then settled into the hammock as darkness fell. The sounds of the jungle created a symphony around me as stars appeared in astonishing numbers overhead. Without light pollution, the night sky revealed its full glory. Then, alone with my thoughts for the first time in truly peaceful surroundings, I began to cry. Not the controlled tears I had allowed myself at home, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from my very core. I cried for the friendship I had lost, for the betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined, and for the insecurity that had plagued me since reading that text. You would not really fit in. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen, until there seemed to be no tears left. Exhausted, I fell asleep in the hammock, lulled by the distant sound of waves breaking on the shore. Morning arrived with golden light filtering through the trees and the calls of unfamiliar birds. My body ached from a night in the hammock, but my mind felt lighter, as if the previous night's tears had washed away some of the heaviness I had been carrying. Taking Lucia's advice, I made my way to the yoga platform for the 7:00 class. About a dozen other guests were already rolling out mats when I arrived. The instructor, Elena, a serene woman with silver-streaked black hair, welcomed me with a warm smile. "We begin today by setting an intention," she said once everyone was settled. "Close your eyes and consider what you wish to release and what you wish to invite in." As I closed my eyes, Olivia's face appeared in my mind. 20 years of memories, good and bad, flashed behind my eyelids. "Notice what arises without judgment," Elena continued, her voice soothing. "Acknowledge any discomfort, any pain, and breathe into it. Then imagine it dissolving with each exhale, making space for new energy." The yoga session challenged my body in ways that demanded full attention, temporarily freeing me from the thought loops that had dominated recent weeks. By the final relaxation pose, a sense of calm had replaced the raw emotion of the previous night. "The people who are meant to journey with us will stay without being forced," Elena said as we rolled up our mats. "Those who leave make space for new connections that serve our highest good." Her words followed me to breakfast, where I sat alone on the terrace overlooking the ocean. The fresh tropical fruit and local coffee tasted better than anything I had eaten in weeks, my appetite finally returning after days of emotional eating or not eating at all. "First time in Costa Rica?" asked an older woman who approached my table with her husband. "Yes," I replied automatically, tensing at the intrusion into my solitude. "Mind if we join you? I am Margaret, and this is my husband, Robert." Something about their kind faces made it impossible to refuse. They settled across from me, and Margaret studied me with gentle curiosity. "Forgive me for saying so, but you have the look of someone nursing a broken heart," she observed. Under normal circumstances, I would have deflected such a personal observation from a stranger, but something about this place, about being thousands of miles from home, loosened my usual guards. "Not romantic," I clarified. "Friendship. My best friend of 20 years decided I was not good enough for her wedding." Robert shook his head. "That is no friend at all." Margaret reached across the table and patted my hand. "Robert and I are celebrating 40 years of marriage this trip. Want to know the secret to lasting relationships of any kind?" I nodded, curious despite myself. "Choosing each other again and again, especially when it is difficult," she said. "Anyone who stops choosing you when something shinier comes along never truly chose you in the first place." That afternoon, I signed up for a waterfall hike, needing physical activity to process my thoughts. Our guide, Sophia, led 6 of us through dense rainforest trails, pointing out wildlife and explaining the ecosystem with infectious enthusiasm. At the base of a stunning 60-foot waterfall, the group scattered to swim or take photos. Sophia sat beside me on a sun-warmed rock. "You are traveling alone?" she asked. "Yes, needed to clear my head." She nodded understandingly. I once had a best friend who betrayed me with my boyfriend. The pain was very bad. How did you get past it? I asked, surprised by the parallel. Time, distance, forgiveness, eventually. Not for her, but for me. Sophia skimmed her fingers through the crystal clear water. The anger was poisoning only me. You understand? She was living her life while I was stuck. That makes sense, I said slowly. I am just not sure how to let go. Start by putting down the weight for moments at a time, she suggested. Then those moments become hours, then days. That evening at dinner, I found myself joining Margaret and Robert again, along with 2 other solo travelers. For the first time in weeks, I laughed genuinely as Robert shared stories of their travel mishaps over 4 decades together. When I returned to my cabin, I realized I had forgotten to check my phone all day. It remained in airplane mode in my beach bag, untouched since arrival. The freedom from constant updates felt surprisingly liberating. The next morning, I had planned to use the main lodge Wi-Fi to check in with my family as promised. But as I walked toward the lodge, I noticed a sign advertising a boat trip to a nearby cove known for sea turtles. On impulse, I signed up instead, telling myself I would check in that evening. The boat trip extended into a picnic lunch on a deserted beach, followed by snorkeling in crystal clear waters, where colorful fish darted around my fingertips. By sunset, I was enjoying dinner with my new friends, my phone forgotten once again. That night, watching the sunset from my private deck, a profound realization washed over me. My worth was not determined by Olivia's assessment. It was not diminished by her rejection or validated by her acceptance. For too long, I had measured my value through the prism of our friendship, allowing her growing distance to make me question myself. In the golden light of the Costa Rican sunset, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the kindness of strangers who had become friends in days, I felt something shift within me. The pain did not vanish, but it transformed, becoming less about what I had lost and more about what I could now find. That night I dreamed of Olivia in her wedding dress, standing at the edge of the ocean. In the dream, she stepped into the water, her elaborate gown billowing around her as she waded deeper. I called out to her, but she kept walking until the water closed over her head. I woke with a start, my heart racing, a strange sense of foreboding clinging to me, despite the peaceful morning light filtering through my windows. Shaking off the unsettling dream, I made a spontaneous decision. I would extend my stay by 3 days. The thought of returning to real life, of potentially seeing wedding photos or hearing about the celebration, still created a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Here, in this peaceful haven, I had found a sense of self that felt too new, too fragile to expose to that potential pain. I visited the resort office and arranged the extension, using the office computer to send a brief email to my family explaining my decision. Finding exactly what I needed here, extended stay by 3 days, limited connection, but all is well. Love you. The additional days became a gift to myself. I filled them with sunrise swims in the ocean, hikes to hidden waterfalls, and evenings spent journaling on my deck. I started a gratitude practice, writing 3 things each day that brought me joy, independent of anyone else's validation. On my last morning, I sat on the beach at dawn, watching the sky transition from indigo to pink to golden as the sun emerged from the horizon. The woman who had arrived a week earlier, heartbroken and questioning her worth, was not the same one preparing to return home. The pain had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something I could carry without being crushed by its weight. As I waited for my airport transfer, Lucia approached with a small woven bracelet. "A reminder," she said, tying it around my wrist. "The ocean is always changing, never static. So too are we. What hurts today shapes who we become tomorrow." I touched the bracelet gently. "Thank you for everything." "You arrived with shadows in your eyes," she observed. "You leave with light. Safe journey, Lisa." While I was finding peace in Costa Rica, events in Connecticut were unfolding in ways no one could have predicted. The morning of Olivia and Jason's wedding dawned with unexpected rain, despite the perfect forecast that had been promised for months. The $200,000 outdoor ceremony setup was hastily covered with tents, already putting Eleanor Peters in a foul mood. "This is completely unacceptable," she snapped at the wedding planner, a competent woman who had managed events for actual celebrities without incident. "Jason said you were the best in the business. I see that was an exaggeration." In the bridal suite of the luxury hotel adjacent to the ceremony space, Olivia was already struggling with pre-wedding jitters that went beyond typical nerves. Her carefully selected bridesmaids, chosen more for their social connections and Instagram aesthetics than genuine friendship, were little help. "The florist used peonies that are one shade too pink," complained Tiffany Blackwell, Jason's cousin and bridesmaid. "It completely clashes with the table settings." "My dress feels tighter than at the final fitting," added Genevieve Montgomery, daughter of a fashion magazine editor. "The alterations must have been done incorrectly." As the stylist worked on her hair and makeup, Olivia felt a growing sense of unreality. These women surrounding her were practically strangers, yet they were standing in for the lifelong friend she had discarded. Eleanor swept into the bridal suite in a cloud of expensive perfume. "The ceremony needs to be moved entirely indoors," she announced. "I have already instructed the planners to rearrange the ballroom." "But we designed everything for an outdoor sunset ceremony," Olivia protested weakly. "All the details were planned for natural light." "Well, that is clearly not happening," Eleanor replied dismissively. "I have selected new floral arrangements that will better suit the ballroom aesthetic." "You changed the flowers without asking me?" Olivia's voice rose slightly. Eleanor fixed her with a cool stare. "Darling, this event reflects on the Peters family name. We cannot have wilting garden flowers in Instagram photos. The arrangements I selected cost $12,000 each. You should be thanking me." Before Olivia could respond, her phone chimed with a text from Jason. "Running late, slight hangover from last night. Start photos without me." The groomsmen had taken Jason to an exclusive club the previous night, extending what was supposed to be a reasonable dinner into an all-night celebration that ended at 5 a.m. When Jason finally arrived for pre-ceremony photos, his eyes were bloodshot behind designer sunglasses, and he swayed slightly when he walked. "You have been drinking already," Olivia hissed when they had a moment alone. "Hair of the dog," he replied with a careless shrug. "Only way to get through this circus my mother has created." "This circus is our wedding," she reminded him, hurt evident in her voice. He removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that held more irritation than affection. "Let us be honest, Olivia, this stopped being about us months ago. This is a Peters family social obligation, nothing more." While the photographer attempted to capture romantic moments between the visibly tense couple, Olivia's parents arrived and were immediately sidelined by Eleanor's staff. "The immediate family seating has been rearranged," an assistant informed them coolly. "The Peters family will occupy the first 2 rows, with the Wallace family in the 3rd row." Thomas Wallace, who had worked overtime for months to contribute to his only daughter's wedding, felt his face flush with anger. "That is unacceptable. We are the bride's parents." "Take it up with Mrs. Peters," the assistant replied, before hurrying away. Inside the bridal suite, Olivia was finally alone. The makeup artists and bridesmaids had left to take their positions for the ceremony, scheduled to begin in 20 minutes. She checked her phone out of habit, hoping for a message from Lisa, some miracle of forgiveness that would bring her oldest friend back to her side when she needed her most. There was nothing, of course, only a text from Jason. "Need to speak with you before ceremony. Meet me in the library." Gathering her massive skirts, Olivia made her way to the hotel's wood-paneled library. She found Jason typing furiously on his phone, barely looking up when she entered. "What is so important?" she asked, anxiety making her voice sharper than intended. "Just confirming you signed the updated prenup my father sent over," he said, still focused on his screen. "What updated prenup? I signed the papers last month." Jason finally looked up, annoyance clear in his expression. "The addendum. My father had his lawyers add a few clauses about family property and future inheritances. Nothing major." "I never received any addendum," Olivia said, confusion turning to alarm. "Why would they send something new days before the wedding without telling me?" Jason sighed as if dealing with a difficult child. "Probably because they knew you would overreact exactly as you are doing now. It just clarifies that Peters family properties remain Peters family assets regardless of marriage duration. So everything you inherit will remain solely yours, even if we are married 50 years?" she asked, disbelief coloring her tone. "That is how family trusts work, Olivia," he replied condescendingly. "I thought you understood this. It is how people in our circle operate." The phrase "our circle" hit her like a physical blow, a reminder that she was still considered an outsider, despite months of trying to belong. "Were you just texting your ex-girlfriend?" she asked suddenly, having glimpsed a familiar name on his screen. Jason's expression darkened. "Do not start this again. Courtney and I have business connections through her father's investment firm." "Business that requires texting her minutes before our wedding ceremony?" This is exactly why the prenup is necessary, he snapped. This emotional instability whenever I maintain professional relationships. As they argued, Eleanor entered the library, her face tight with disapproval. The guests are seated. What are you two doing hiding in here? Jason just informed me of a prenup addendum I never received, Olivia said, turning to her future mother-in-law. Of course there is an addendum, Eleanor replied smoothly. The original agreement was far too generous. My husband simply protected our family interests, as is prudent. Too generous? Olivia repeated, her voice rising. I would receive nothing unless we were married at least 5 years. And now, it is 10, Eleanor stated coldly. A reasonable timeline to prove this is not about Peter's money, which frankly your behavior has called into question. Jason checked his watch impatiently. Can we discuss this later? 300 people are waiting. 300 of your family's connections, Olivia said quietly. I was not even allowed to invite my oldest friend. That public school teacher? Eleanor scoffed. Really, Olivia? She would have been completely out of her depth. We did her a favor. Something snapped inside Olivia at those words. Her name is Lisa. She has been my friend for 20 years, and she was the only person who ever loved me for exactly who I am. And who is that exactly? Jason asked with a sneer. Because the woman I proposed to understood her role in this family. She did not question business decisions or create scenes minutes before major social events. Olivia felt tears welling, threatening to ruin the $1,000 makeup application. I do not even recognize myself anymore, she whispered. Pull yourself together, Eleanor hissed. You are about to become a Peters. Act like one. Your makeup is already ruined, Jason observed coldly. You should fix that before the ceremony. You look terrible. That casual cruelty, delivered in front of his mother, who nodded in agreement, was the final revelation Olivia needed. This was the man she was about to promise her life to. This was the family she had sacrificed everything to join. The library door opened again, and Thomas Wallace entered, concern evident on his face. Olivia, is everything all right? The ceremony was supposed to start 10 minutes ago. Everything is fine, Mr. Wallace, Eleanor said dismissively. Just some last-minute bridal nerves. Thomas looked at his daughter's tear-streaked face and reddening eyes. This does not look fine to me, he said firmly. Olivia, what is going on? Nothing, Dad, she began automatically, the reflex to smooth things over still strong. Then she stopped, really looking at her father's worried expression. Actually, no. Everything is not fine. We do not have time for this, Jason muttered, reaching for his phone again. Thomas stepped forward protectively. Make time. That is my daughter in a $3,000 dress that her mother and I helped pay for. If she says something is wrong, then something is wrong. Eleanor drew herself up to her full height. Mr. Wallace, I understand you contributed what you could to this event, but let us be clear about who is financing the majority of this wedding. Let us be clear about whose daughter is being treated poorly minutes before she walks down the aisle, Thomas countered, surprising everyone with his firmness. Olivia looked between her father and the Peters, suddenly seeing with painful clarity the dynamic she was about to legally bind herself to for life. I want to call Lisa, she said suddenly. Who? Eleanor asked. Lisa, my best friend, the one you made me cut from the wedding because she was not good enough for your precious guest list. That is absurd, Eleanor scoffed. You said yourself she would not fit in with this crowd. No, Olivia corrected, strength returning to her voice. You said that. I repeated it because I was so desperate to please you, to belong in your world. Olivia, Jason said warningly, think very carefully about what you are doing right now. She turned to him, seeing for the first time the coldness that had always been there in his eyes. I have been thinking carefully for months, so carefully that I lost myself completely. I even lost Lisa, the one person who has always been there for me. If you walk out that door, Eleanor threatened, you can forget about becoming part of this family. Olivia looked at the woman who had controlled and criticized her for months, then at the man who had just revealed his true character in the cruelest way, and finally at her father, who stood ready to support whatever decision she made. I already have a family, she said quietly. Then, gathering her enormous skirts, she walked out of the library with her father close behind. What followed would become social media legend in certain circles. Thomas Wallace, displaying unexpected backbone, stood before 300 expensively dressed guests and announced that the wedding would not be taking place. Eleanor Peters fainted dramatically. Jason stormed out a side entrance, already texting his ex-girlfriend before the murmuring crowd had dispersed. As news spread through text messages and social media, the hashtag #PetersWeddingDisaster began trending locally. Guests posted surreptitious videos of Eleanor being revived with smelling salts, of Jason's groomsmen drunkenly arguing with catering staff, of flowers being hastily removed from centerpieces by cost-conscious relatives. And throughout the chaos, Olivia sat in a hotel room with her parents, repeatedly trying to call the one person she desperately needed but could not reach. Lisa's phone went straight to voicemail. Her texts remained undelivered, and emails went unanswered. As evening fell on what should have been their wedding night, the Wallace and Peters families were on separate private jets, one headed back to their modest home with a daughter who had narrowly escaped a lifetime of misery, the other to their multiple properties with a social embarrassment they would spend months trying to minimize through strategic donations and carefully worded press releases. And all the while, Lisa's family was frantically trying to reach her with updates on the wedding disaster, their messages piling up unread on a phone that remained in airplane mode on a bedside table in Costa Rica. My final morning in Costa Rica was bittersweet. I took one last sunrise swim in the ocean, savoring the weightless feeling of floating in crystal clear water. After breakfast with Margaret and Robert, who had become surrogate grandparents during my stay, I reluctantly checked out of my cabin and waited for my airport transfer. "Remember what we talked about," Margaret said, hugging me goodbye. "Your worth is inherent. It does not depend on anyone else's ability to see it." The journey home felt surreal after the peaceful bubble of Playa Serena. Each airport brought me closer to reality, to potentially seeing social media updates about the wedding I had been excluded from. By the time my final flight landed, anxiety had begun to creep back, undermining the sense of peace I had cultivated. In the taxi line, I finally turned off airplane mode on my phone, bracing myself for whatever notifications might appear. The device immediately began buzzing frantically, lighting up with an overwhelming stream of alerts that continued for nearly a full minute. 47 missed calls, 68 text messages, 12 voicemails, over 100 email notifications. My first thought was that something terrible had happened to a family member. Heart racing, I scrolled through the notifications to see that most of the missed calls were from my parents and Alicia, along with several from numbers I did not recognize. The first text message that caught my eye was from Alicia, sent the day of the wedding. "OMG, the wedding exploded, call me." Confused, I opened my voicemail and played the first message from my mother. "Lisa, honey, call as soon as you get this. Something happened with Olivia's wedding. Just call us." Each subsequent message increased in urgency. My father, typically brief in communications. "Sweetheart, when you get this, please call immediately. Everyone is trying to reach you." Most surprising was a voicemail from Mrs. Wallace, Olivia's mother. "Lisa, this is Diana Wallace. I know you and Olivia have had a falling out, but she needs you right now. Please call when you can." As the taxi inched forward in the airport traffic, I scrolled through texts that painted an increasingly clear picture. The wedding had not just been postponed or altered, it had completely fallen apart in spectacular fashion. From Alicia, "Jason is a total creep. Tried to make her sign new prenup at the ceremony." From my mother, "Diana says Olivia has been asking for you nonstop. They cannot reach you either." From my father, "Wedding called off. Olivia stood up to that horrible family. Proud of her." From a number I did not recognize, "Hi Lisa, this is Thomas Wallace. Olivia gave me your number. Please call when you can. She really needs her friend right now." By the time I reached my apartment building, I had pieced together the broad strokes but was still missing critical details. The wedding had been canceled at the last minute. Jason and his family had shown their true colors. Olivia had stood her ground, and everyone had been trying desperately to reach me during my self-imposed communication blackout. I paid the taxi driver and wheeled my suitcase into the lobby, my mind still reeling from the unexpected development. As the elevator doors opened on my floor, I was surprised to see Alicia sitting outside my apartment door, scrolling through her phone. "You are finally back," she exclaimed, jumping up to hug me. "We have been going crazy trying to reach you." "I just turned my phone on at the airport," I explained, fumbling for my keys. "What on earth happened?" "Everyone is inside waiting," she said cryptically, taking my suitcase handle. "Everyone? Who is everyone?" I asked as I unlocked my door. The answer became immediately clear as I stepped inside to find my parents sitting on my couch, cups of coffee on the table in front of them. "Surprise! Welcome home," my mother said, rising to embrace me. "We have been taking turns waiting here since we knew your flight was landing today." "This is crazy," I said, dropping my bag in shock. "You all did not need to do this." "Trust me, we did," my father said, giving me a warm hug. "You have missed quite a dramatic few days." Once I had changed out of my travel clothes and everyone had fresh coffee, my family took turns filling in the details of what they had learned through Diana Wallace, social media, and mutual acquaintances who had attended the aborted wedding. So Eleanor Peters basically treated Olivia's parents like second-class citizens the entire engagement, Alicia explained. But it got really bad at the wedding itself. They were relegated to the third row at their own daughter's wedding, my mother added indignantly. And then, my father continued, Jason showed up hungover to the ceremony and tried to force Olivia to sign a new prenup minutes before they were supposed to walk down the aisle. Apparently, he was texting his ex-girlfriend at the same time, Alicia interjected. Total sleazebag move. The final straw was when he insulted her appearance right before the ceremony, my mother said. Diana said Olivia was in tears, and when her father came to check on her, she finally stood up to all of them. She mentioned you specifically, Alicia said, watching my reaction carefully. Diana told Mom that Olivia said cutting you from the wedding was her biggest regret, that you were the only person who ever loved her for exactly who she was. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything. Part of me felt vindicated that Olivia had finally seen Jason and his family for who they truly were. Another part ached for the pain she must be experiencing, calling off a wedding in front of hundreds of guests. She has been trying to reach you non-stop, my father said gently. Her mother called us when they could not get through to you. I had no idea, I whispered. I was supposed to check in, but I got caught up in the trip and it felt so good to disconnect. No one is blaming you, my mother assured me. In fact, it might have been for the best. You were taking care of yourself instead of getting pulled into the drama. What do I do now? I asked, still overwhelmed. That is entirely up to you, my father said. You do not owe her your support after how she treated you. As if on cue, my phone rang with an unknown number. We all stared at it for a moment before Alicia said, $10 says that is Olivia. I hesitated, then answered on speaker. Hello? Lisa? Olivia's voice was barely recognizable, raspy, as if she had been crying for days. Is that really you? I have been trying to reach you for ages. I just got back from Costa Rica, I explained. My phone was on airplane mode. Costa Rica? You went on vacation? Yes, I said simply, not offering further explanation. There was a pause, then, I need to see you, please. I know I do not deserve it after everything, but please, Lisa, I do not know who else to talk to. My family exchanged glances, clearly concerned about me being hurt again. I covered the microphone and whispered, I think I need to do this. My father nodded reluctantly, while my mother whispered, be careful. I can meet you tomorrow, I told Olivia, the cafe on Maple Street at 11. I will be there, she said, relief evident in her voice. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. After we hung up, Alicia fixed me with a serious look. Are you sure about this? She dropped you like yesterday's trash when you did not fit her fancy new image. I know, I acknowledged, but something tells me I need to hear what she has to say. After that, I can decide whether there is anything worth salvaging. That night, after my family finally left, I unpacked my suitcase and found the small, woven bracelet Lucia had given me. The ocean is always changing, never static. So too are we. The coincidence of Olivia's wedding imploding while I was finding peace by the ocean seemed almost too perfect to be random. Perhaps the universe did work in mysterious ways after all. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, selecting a quiet table in the corner away from other patrons. I ordered a cappuccino and tried to calm my racing thoughts, unsure what to expect from this meeting. When Olivia walked in, I almost did not recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes, perfect makeup, and carefully styled hair that had become her uniform during the engagement. Instead, she wore simple jeans, a plain sweater, and her natural curls that I had not seen in years. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, with dark circles that even concealer could not hide. She spotted me and froze momentarily, as if gathering courage before walking over. I stood awkwardly, neither of us quite sure if we should hug or shake hands, or simply nod in acknowledgement of our complicated history. Thank you for coming, she said finally, sliding into the chair across from me. I would not have blamed you if you had refused. I almost did, I admitted. My family thinks I am crazy for being here. She winced visibly at that. They hate me now. They do not. They are protective, I corrected. You hurt me, Olivia, deeply. Tears immediately filled her eyes. I know. I do not even know where to begin apologizing. What I did was unforgivable. The server approached, and Olivia ordered a simple tea, her hands trembling slightly as she handed back the menu. When we were alone again, she took a deep breath. I got completely lost, Lisa. I became someone I do not recognize and treated the people who truly cared about me like they were disposable. Her voice cracked on the last word. Especially you. Why? I asked simply, the question I had been turning over in my mind for months. 20 years of friendship, and suddenly I was not good enough. It was never about you not being good enough, she said, wiping away tears. It was about me feeling like I was not good enough. Jason's world was so intimidating, so perfect on the surface. His mother made it clear from day one that everything about me needed improvement. My clothes, my friends, my background, my career aspirations. And you believed her, I stated rather than asked. I wanted to belong so badly, she confessed. Every time I made a change she suggested, I received approval, inclusion. It became addictive. She would hint that certain friends did not enhance my image, and I would distance myself from them. She would suggest certain social connections were important, and I would pursue them relentlessly. Until you cut me out completely, I said flatly. Olivia's face crumpled. She never said it directly about you, but she would make these comments about your job, your clothes, your lack of connections, how it reflected on me to have a simple best friend. She made air quotes around the word. I justified it by telling myself it was just for the wedding, that we would reconnect afterward. That still does not explain why you cut me from the guest list entirely, I pointed out, the hurt still fresh despite my week of healing. Jason's father added 20 business associates at the last minute. Eleanor said someone had to go, and she suggested... Olivia trailed off, clearly ashamed. Me, I finished for her. I tried to protest, but by then I had spent so long deferring to her judgment that I did not know how to stand up to her anymore. She looked down at her untouched tea. The worst part is that I knew how much it would hurt you, and I did it anyway. I convinced myself it was a necessary sacrifice for my new life. What happened at the wedding? I asked, changing the subject slightly. I have heard pieces from my family, but I want your version. Olivia recounted the events of that day in painful detail, the controlling behavior from Eleanor, Jason's drunken arrival, the prenup ambush, and finally his cruel comment about her appearance that had broken through her carefully constructed illusion. When he said I looked terrible right in front of his mother, who nodded in agreement, something just snapped inside me, she explained. I suddenly saw, with perfect clarity, what my life would be like with him. Years of criticism, of never being good enough, of being molded into someone I did not recognize. So you walked away, I said, a hint of admiration creeping into my voice despite myself. I asked for you, she admitted quietly. In that moment, standing there in that ridiculous $20,000 dress, all I wanted was to talk to you, to have you tell me what to do, like when we were kids and I was too scared to stand up for myself. But you were not there, because I had thrown away our friendship for people who never truly cared about me. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling between us. Where did you go? She asked finally. Your mother said Costa Rica, but that is all she knew. I told her about my impulsive trip, about the eco-resort and the healing I had found there. As I described disconnecting from technology and reconnecting with myself, I could see recognition in her eyes. That sounds exactly like what I need right now, she said wistfully. Somewhere to figure out who I actually am after months of being who everyone else wanted me to be. It helped me realize something important, I said. My worth is not determined by your assessment of me. It is not diminished by your rejection or validated by your acceptance. She flinched at the directness but nodded. You always knew who you were. I envied that about you, even while I was being swept up in the Peters world. You never compromised your values for approval. I almost did, I admitted. When you first started pulling away, I considered changing myself, buying clothes I could not afford, pretending to be interested in things I did not care about, anything to keep my place in your life. I am so glad you did not, she said fervently. At least one of us remained authentic. What will you do now? I asked. Start over, she said with a small shrug. I moved back in with my mom temporarily. I am reapplying to finish my design degree, the one I abandoned when Jason suggested I focus on being a proper Peter's wife instead. And the social fallout? I asked. Brutal, she admitted. The hashtag was trending locally for days. Eleanor has been telling everyone I had a mental breakdown. Jason is already dating his ex-girlfriend again, making it pretty clear that was happening all along. Despite everything, I felt a surge of protectiveness. That is terrible. The worst part was facing everyone's judgment alone, she said. I kept calling you, hoping you would pick up and help me figure out how to handle it all. You always knew exactly what to say in difficult situations. Her vulnerability in that moment touched something in me. The woman sitting across from me was not the polished, distant person who had cut me from her wedding. She was the girl I had known for 20 years, finally finding her way back to herself through painful circumstances. I cannot just pick up where we left off, I said carefully. Too much has happened. I know, she said quickly. I would never expect that. I just hoped maybe we could start rebuilding slowly. New boundaries, new expectations. I miss my best friend, but I understand if that relationship cannot be salvaged. I considered her words, thinking of what Sophia had told me at the waterfall in Costa Rica. Time, distance, forgiveness eventually. Not for her, but for me. I think, I said slowly, that we could try a new kind of friendship. Not what we had before, but something that honors the history while acknowledging what happened. The relief on her face was palpable. That is more than I deserve, but I would like that very much. Over the next few weeks, Olivia and I cautiously rebuilt a connection. I helped her navigate the social media fallout, teaching her how to limit comments and curate her online presence during the worst of the gossip. She enrolled in classes and slowly began rediscovering her passion for design that had been sidelined during her relationship with Jason. We met for coffee every couple of weeks, carefully avoiding the intense codependence that had characterized our friendship before. I maintained the boundaries I had established during my time in Costa Rica, prioritizing my own well-being while offering support where I could. 6 months after the wedding. That never happened. We had dinner at a casual restaurant downtown. Olivia looked healthier than I had seen her in years, her natural confidence returning as she showed me sketches for her final project. I have a date next week, I mentioned as we shared dessert. A science teacher from the middle school, David. He asked me out after a district training day. That is wonderful, Olivia said genuinely. What is he like? Kind, funny, appreciates me exactly as I am. I smiled, thinking of how David had complimented my passion for teaching, rather than questioning why I had not pursued a more lucrative career. The best kind of person, Olivia agreed. Those are rare. As we walked to our cars afterward, she turned to me with unexpected seriousness. I never properly thanked you. For what? For showing me what true friendship looks like, even when I failed to do the same. For being willing to try again despite how badly I hurt you. She hesitated, then added, and for being unavailable when the wedding imploded. I raised an eyebrow at that last part. If you had been reachable, I would have leaned on you completely, she explained, made you responsible for picking up the pieces of my life. Instead, I had to figure things out for myself. It was exactly what I needed, even though it was terrifying at the time. Her insight surprised me. Sometimes the universe knows exactly what we need, even when we think we need something else entirely. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the strange journey of the past year, the painful exclusion that had led me to Costa Rica, the peace I had found there while chaos erupted back home, the new, healthier relationship that had emerged from the ashes of betrayal. The wedding disaster that had seemed like the end of the world had actually been the beginning of something better for both of us. Olivia had found the strength to be authentic again. I had discovered my worth existed independently of others' validation. And somewhere along the way, forgiveness had transformed from an impossible ideal to a healing reality. Life rarely unfolds as we expect. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead to unexpected growth. Sometimes we have to get lost to find ourselves. And sometimes the detours turn out to be exactly where we were meant to go all along. Have you ever had a friendship that needed to break before it could become healthier, or experienced a painful rejection that ultimately led you somewhere better? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding strength through life's unexpected challenges. And remember, your worth is inherent. It does not depend on anyone else's ability to see it. Thank you for listening, and until next time, trust the journey, even when the path seems unclear.